And when you think about what it would take for you to make it your job, hey, you know what? We can traffic our kids. We can make videos and get them out there and make it an industry, a cottage industry. Those people, I just think, need to be dragged out in the street, you know, um, because there's another level of evil there. I can tell you that I am not I don't damn my abusers to hell. I cared about them. I have really fond memories of that. But if I was systematic, like if I was being pimped out, that's a whole nother level of like inhumanity, you know. And I suppose you may not understand what I'm saying, but
No,
like,
man, I do understand that.
yeah,
And I think that's probably one thing Craig and I can understand is we know what it's like to have a childhood where we could be knuckleheads and run in the
yeah,
woods all night long and not have to worry about that sort of thing. So we're on the other side of that. And so we think everybody lived that way until we were,
yeah,
as adults, we were like, wait a minute. So, I mean, I get your anger because I'm kind of I know Craig, he's pretty much shared that when he discovered this was going on, he was angry because he thought he was on the most righteous journey that he could be and realized that there was one that was a bit greater cause than what he had been for his military career.
yeah.
So I understand that for sure. Yeah. And it makes no sense. It's illogical. And it's what I've been using lately has been unnatural. It's very unnatural. It's unnatural for somebody to desire a child. It's unnatural for them to touch a child inappropriately. It's unnatural for you to sell your kids to do anything, labor, sex, whatever, you know.
Hmm.
When we
Well,
were kids, we had to
I
go
was at
earn
the
money the hard way. We had to go mow people's lawns for $7 a lawn. That was our parents. That was how our parents used to, but we got the
yeah.
money, we got the blisters and the money and, you know,
Well, that's a good point. I think though Craig probably has a different point of view that because of the breakdown of the spiritual family of the kind of the I would say the accountability that families used to have in their communities by their neighbors, if they were involved in church or whatever groups they were in, there was a little bit more. I would say probably a lot more accountability for how you managed your family. And in these last let's say 40 years, I've seen the value shift. And I know that Craig, you've talked about that a lot. And I think that that's where your heart is, it kind of beams from, is that there's, guys, it's not the sin, it's the environment that allows the sin to flourish, kind of thing. Is that not?
No, you're right. I see another angle also that if you want to harm someone, let's say it was a public figure. You wanted to harm this public figure. What if they had bodyguards?
Yeah.
Well, those bodyguards would be a problem for you harming them. You would need to get around that. You would need to somehow undermine and disempower their bodyguards, make them sick, get them out of there, distract them, something. And that's what I see this war on the nuclear family as being. It is evil wanting to get to the children. Parents were in the way. So culturally, we began getting poisoned with all of this narrative of take the mommies out of the home, get the kids in the state-run institutions at the earliest possible juncture, split, divide mommy against daddy, start having gender wars, start introducing every manner of divide and conquer strategy and tactics as you can, get them squabbling, get them split, have them divorce as often as possible on a wide a scale as possible, and leave the children vulnerable. Attack the strong moral and ethical values that would have protected the children. Get rid of that so you, as the evil one, can get to that precious little child and cause the harm. That's how I see it. Having interviewed so many people and survivors and learning how the harm happens
Hmm.
and ultimately why it happens. And that's when you get into the spiritual aspect of it. It's undeniable. It's unavoidable. Once you, if
Right.
you care enough about the truth and you dig and you research anything, you're eventually going to find pretty close to what's really true. And that's what we found in this journey. We're like, why are children being harmed so badly? And what's behind it? And that's what we found. And so there you've got the evil one and his minions in the spiritual realm motivating humans to harm the children. And so there are a lot of things that were in place to protect children, and look at it across the board. They've all been eliminated or diminished over the
Right.
last couple generations. Since I was born, just an all-out assault on the nuclear family unit. And I think the sooner we all, as a collective body, a collective society, sit up and go, okay, we see that, we understand that, the lesson is learned. Now, let's set about rebuilding that nuclear family unit. It's so productive, it's so healthy
Right.
for
Right.
all. Then the sooner we'll get back to something that it's not this destructive.
You know, well, I want to come back to that, but like that opens up a whole thesis of how that sure thing happened.
Hey, hang on. Say that again. You're freezing up. I don't know why you're freezing up. Let's wait till you
Um,
unfreeze.
Elizabeth,
Hang on.
it,
Start. Hey, JT, start
man,
over. You were freezing up.
okay, am I unfrozen yet?
Yeah,
Okay,
you are now.
okay, I'm good now. Am I moving? Am I working? Okay. I just want to say that I want to come back to that because I have a thesis about that
Up, it's freezing up again.
fractured family and where that started. And I know that, the older folks in this room will appreciate that. But Elizabeth, speaking of which, you've really come from the front line, this week, well, actually for a month of helping out. Why don't you tell us what's been going on?
You know, and it really, like Craig had a point, like it really starts with fracturing the family because they were divorced. They were married. These are his natural children. His first victim was not, or the one that I know about was not, but these other ones are. They're like his natural children. And there was that separation of marriage and home. And I mean, even in my own life, it was the same thing here. I think the same way that Craig does. Like the enemy is seeking, how do you destroy that strength? How do you destroy that structure? I think that media does the same thing. Like you, even politically, you saw commercials where the wife was supposed to go out and vote and against whatever the husband thought, but that's not really how it works. And you're promoting an unhealthy relationship, and that starts in the home. And our children are seeing that. And when your young kids are watching this, they think, oh, that's normal. This is how my home is. Like, not what building a healthy home is. And really just watching this mom be strong and being there this week in the stand that she has had to take. And then to watch it all come crumbling down.
So,
Just
Elizabeth, why don't you tell us a little bit about this? Like
Yeah.
our listeners haven't been kept to date. So, why don't you just give a quick synopsis of the story?
Yeah, so I had this privilege of meeting this really amazing mom that has taken a stand for her family of her girls who were sexually abused by their father. As well as finding out that there was another victim, and she's really been there to support her daughter and proceed forward with this, and how hard it is to go through the court system and wanting to quit and just being that support that her daughter needed to continue through it. Well, it's been a long, drug out 5 years. They went to trial. It was a hung jury from one juror, and it's just been a battle. So they settled on a plea deal. There were 14 original
Counts.
indictments. Counts. I don't feel good. I apologize.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
no. All right.
So from those 14, it went down to 2, which is so hard to comprehend that we can take somebody who does all of that to a human being, an innocent child, and we can take that down to two
Mm.
counts of a slap on the hand from what you did do, all in order to settle for a plea, which is not okay whatsoever. And she's still like, we've been able to reach out for the past few months and just talk about the experience that I went through, how I dealt with it, like what I needed, and just really tried to be there with what I know I would have appreciated if I had it when I went through it. And we did talk. We were able to talk before we had court yesterday. And we were able to talk, and I did let her know that there could be that possibility that he might not see jail at all. Like, unfortunately, as I had to learn in my own case, they're going to go with the minimum sentence offered. Like, that's what happened. So that there was always that possibility. And then we go to court yesterday, and sure enough, he gets natural life probation, sex offender probation, which he can graduate out of, for lack of a better way to put that. He can appeal it later after he does all these steps. And apparently it's a lot harder to graduate from this. Like, there's a lot more steps than if he would have just been in prison for 3 years and gotten out. There would have been no rehabilitation. There would have been no accountability, which is the reason the judge decided to go this way. Like, I could tell that he put the thought into it. Like, he really did consider it. And he flat out told him, like, you did hurt these girls, and the first step in you getting rehabilitated, like, you're not going to make it through this, and I will see you back in court if you don't admit you did something, because we know you did something. Whether the people behind you want to believe it, but you're going to need so much support, and they're going to have to admit you did something, because this facade that you're putting on for everybody else, it doesn't matter that you're Border Patrol, it doesn't matter that you were in the military and you do all this for your community. Like, I see through that, is pretty much what he was telling him.
Yeah.
But what you do in the dark is what happened, and you did something heinous to these girls. And so, but just hearing that, like, he's not going to get prison time. He's not going to get in jail. He got to go home yesterday. Yeah, he's going to have to pay this stuff. Yeah, he's going to have to take some classes, but what did that do to help the victims? What did that do to protect the other children that are out there? What did that do to protect the grandchildren with the woman that he married through this case? Who's protecting them because she wants to believe he's innocent? What accountability is there going to be that he's not going to be alone with them? Like, is this probation really the best thing? I mean, I know that the judge did what the best of the law could allow him to do to have the most accountability, but it's not good enough. And this poor mom had to sit there after all of this, after it's a different feeling when you know that your child has been hurt, especially if you've been through it and you never want that to happen to your child. And it's such a battle to fight for them, and it shouldn't have to be. Like,
Well, how did she handle that? How did it? Because I would fear that, I've heard people who have been through things like this say, well, what was the point? Not, I always say the point is to fight. It's not like when you're in the court system, everybody loses a little bit, but I hope that she knows that the fight was the reason. The fight is what you should do. How did she feel about that?
So she doesn't feel that way at the moment, understandably. She held it together in court. She did really great. And then the police officer that was in the court asked the defense to stay in there while we all left. And she just, watching her break down from that and wondering what the point of this was. And she was so angry because what came out of it? There was no justification or justice or anything for her daughter. Kaylee's law was invoked, so that was really good. But is anybody gonna go around checking or anything else? Like, she'd have to catch him if he did come around. I do love that is a thing, but that still doesn't make you feel better as a mom that you went through all this. Okay, so now you have an order of protection, but what else was there? Okay, he can't come around you, but he hurt our daughter. He hurt his own blood, and she just
for the audience though, what is Kaylee's law as you understand to be?
Kaylee's law is that when a convicted sex offender or somebody that harms you in that manner, when they get out of prison or jail or the sentencing is done, it is an automatic order of protection. They can't come around you for for their natural life. They can't contact you. They can't anything, because before Kaylee's Law, there was nothing. Like, when the perpetrator that hurt my children gets out of jail, there isn't that. There isn't a protection saying you will never be allowed around them. Like,
You know,
that's
So he,
not.
an
Go ahead.
interesting point on this, though, what Kaylee did, there actually what she had an order of protection from her attacker, who was her soccer coach, but there was a twist on the language, and she had to have it changed to natural born life, meaning
Yeah.
she had what's called a life protective order, but she got it changed to say natural born life, because for some reason the law did not understand that life, it doesn't mean until you die, but natural born
they're
life
not
does.
the same.
It was really stupid. It was a
It
very
is.
stupid thing, and she had to fight really hard. And on a radio show, we had her on the radio show, we actually got in trouble for some things that we said. I got really mad about it. Craig was pretty cool about it. I was pissed.
well, so with that though, then that means also they are a convicted sex offender, which comes with its own level of, must report as one. It can't move to places, can't be near schools. So there is a win there for the
There isn't
public.
any of that.
There's none of
With
that.
sex offender probation, there isn't any of that. He doesn't even have to file as a sex offender.
I don't understand that.
I don't either. That's why yesterday when we left, she was so angry and she just broke down, and like a mom mourning for a child's death, like that just cry at the elevator, and my heart just sank for her, because I was prepared for what was coming, just because in our own case, we offered something and they gave him the minimum of what we offered instead of the maximum. So I was kind of prepared for that. But the heartbreak that she had was there won't be any registering. There won't be anything like that.
Do you recall what the plea, what the charges were that he had either no contested to, or whatever, what those charges were?
I can look them up.
Oh, well,
I'm like,
yeah.
no, not off the top of my head. I didn't sleep great.
Yeah, because that's really advocacy stuff. I mean, and if you're splitting hairs, if he's a sex offender, he's a sex offender. And sometimes that's very hurtful to, let's say, a 17-year-old boy who is dating a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Right. And they have consensual relationship, but the parents get involved, and, it is a sharp double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But it should be there to protect first and foremost, and it doesn't sound like any of that is the case here. So.
I'm not gonna lie, like, sitting in there yesterday, I am so grateful for the prosecutor that was picked for us, because just sitting in there when we first met her, I was not impressed. I was like, oh gosh, like, is she new at this? And then sitting in the courtroom listening to her, the defense attorney was on her A game, and this one was all over the place. And I just felt like she dropped the ball for them. I mean, honestly, like, and if this was who they went into trial with, which it is, I was like, this is who we're providing to protect these children. Like, I don't think she is a bad person or anything like that, but I don't think she's the right person for the job.
So there's Craig. I read a bunch of the articles that. I went down your rabbit hole that you sent, and there is a willful ignorance, and then there is something darker. And Craig, if you want to talk a little bit about that, where you have these people that are not just willfully ignorant of process, but are actively not prosecuting to the best of their abilities, and what the difference is in your opinion.
Well, there's a whole industry now in the judicial system of taking handouts. A lot of them would not even be in their seats, and some of them are elected seats. Judges, DAs, attorneys general are elected positions in many states. And we know that George Soros funds their campaigns to get them in those seats, with the agreement that they won't prosecute entire harmful categories of crimes, including child rape and child trafficking. And my point to that has always been the same. How can any elected official who serves the public be allowed to accept any agreement not to do their job in good faith for the people, no matter what their service to the people is? How can that be allowed? That's obviously a glaring conflict of interest, especially when there's such a harmful category of crime that they're willing to allow to continue. So, as we all know, when any bully is not held to account, they become emboldened. And when you have an army of bullies nationwide or globally that aren't held to account, boy, you've got yourself a rampage. And what we have is that dynamic now, sadly, against the children. George Soros seems to be laughing. It's been talked about before Congress. They've been having the discussions. Yeah, we got these Soros plant DAs in all major cities and many smaller cities now. And attorneys general bought out, paid out, corrupted, turned against the American people, and they're willing to take the cash. Nobody's brought them to account. So, not to get into the political aspect of it, but we do have to fix that. And that has to be a political solution. So, I'm grateful for a man that looks to be taking over the FBI now, who I believe seems to have the will to drain the swamp there, reestablish, fire all the worthless, hopefully prosecute all the corrupt, and bring them to account legally, put them in prison for their crimes. And there have been many, many
Right.
crimes of major betrayal and treason against the United States, huge crimes. So that has to be done. And then install real leaders up and down throughout the chain of command, not just at the top, or you have a head that's righteous and then from the neck down, it's still corrupt. So all throughout the chain of command, real leaders who will carry out the commander's intent in good faith and reinstall a legitimate, righteous culture of following that agency's chartered mission in good faith for the American people in support of the Constitution. If
Right.
that happens, we can start prosecuting DAs and attorneys general and throwing them in prison for taking these crimes and betraying the people and firing the worthless and make it known so that the people can vote for actively and pay attention to get better ones in there. Then we start having these trafficking ringleaders and predators harshly convicted with stiff sentences, and then the dynamic starts to change. But that's a process. But we
Yeah.
have to start by getting the right people in office.
Well, it is, it's apparent that most of the wrongdoings, they're hiding behind language. Laws are language. And when they're written poorly, they serve really no one, because it will end up being where the most innocent are the ones that are put upon by these laws that are poorly written. And you look at that and you could say, well, they can say, well, show me where. And you look in the language like, no, but the spirit of that law is this. And they hide so far behind that there's just no way of calling out the evil as profoundly as we need to. And as you said, Craig, the thought that we have to fix the politics for somebody to just do their job, right? Just to know, oh, okay, I'm supposed to protect kids. Well, that's obvious, right? I mean, above all else, do no harm, those kind of things, those edicts that we have. But it's the language that keeps people afraid, because for a moment, let's think about Scientology. Scientology is a new fangled thing written by a crazy rapist dude, right? He was a crazy then. His tenants are crazy now, and there's a billion-dollar industry of Scientology that is behind it. I say that with a little bit of fear, because they are willing to use that language that we just talked about to destroy me for saying it.
Yeah.
They have the people that are automatons. I mean, they make no money for doing it, but because of their belief, because of their, how tied into the system they are, they'll do anything they tell them. They'll sit outside my house with cameras. They will make up lies. They will do all those things. And that is terrifying to the law abider, because we know that the law, because of the language, really doesn't protect us. You go in there, you lose your money. I was arrested once for a cop that put his hands on me. If there wasn't a camera, I would have had a felony. If there wasn't a camera that proved that he was a liar, right? Now that is a whim that I was protected, but it still cost me so much money to defend myself. And I think that that's like when we talk about what's going on in the family, that it's like one of the number one reasons that the family member won't say anything because they don't want to wreck anything. Mom and dad, new mom and dad. Mommy seems happy now, right? Oh, what about what will this do to dad? Because the abuser is going to threaten that. Well, you know you're going to ruin it, you know? And I honestly think that this battle that we fight, obviously spiritually, Craig, is a fear battle. Perfect love drives out fear. And that perfect love is an edict. It's not an elective. And we have to get to the place where, we have to die trying to do the right thing. And I know that, but in fact, I know that's an exaggeration to a point, but it isn't. Like die socially, die physically to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. What are your thoughts?
Well, I will tell you this. I have some thoughts on this, and I've been saying this for some time. First of all, the language that you're talking about, the legal language, is there for a reason because ambiguity gives sharks the ability to navigate out of trouble, number one. The more ambiguous, the more complex you make it, that gives those in power and those that have the ability to avoid penalties. And so my belief is the old term Occam's razor. It's there for a reason. It's there for them to do that. And what if you go to, or if you ever hear somebody talk about jury duty, and I say this all the time,
you do.
People try to get out of jury duty. I've only been on a jury one time. And when I was in the jury, I was absolutely amazed on how jacked up it was. The judge wouldn't even let us take notes. Okay. We had to listen to a trial. It was a criminal trial for 3 days, and I couldn't take notes. And the other thing that I found what was interesting was there were these two old white dudes. This case happened to be all Hispanic, but all these family members, they were all there, but there were these two old white dudes. And I think it was like going to the movies for them. They sat there and watched the trial the whole time instead of going to the movie theater or sitting at home and, and I just thought it was the weirdest thing. They look like those two guys on, Trading Spaces,
All right.
So,
Places.
Trading Places. One of the, but my point is that I think that we're learning, number one, you got people like Craig said in positions of power. We've seen it most recently with the lawfare that we're seeing. We're seeing it all over the country. And one thing that I've noticed is that prosecutors, everybody wants to plead. They don't ever want to go to trial. We have a trial system that somehow has evolved to where you're better to not go to trial than it is for you to fight for what's right. Okay. That how do we lose that? I would rather fight for what's right and lose, giving everything I got instead of doing a plea deal, and taking whatever scraps we get. And that's exactly what happened to this woman and her kids. They got scraps.
But that what you just brought up, it's, for instance, the Jeffrey Epstein thing, the plea deal that he got for a crime that he would end up continuing to commit, no one knows, because those plea deals are done in the chambers. They're done behind the closed doors, and it makes us all a little crazy because you're like, wait, so we did this before, and somebody gave him a way out. So it isn't even news to us until somebody does enough digging, or somebody like people in this group, Craig, standing on the mountaintop and saying, no, or John the Baptist saying, look at the sin that's going on in that house up there. Right now, it didn't work out well for John the Baptist, but his job was to do that. And I don't think that, we know enough. I think that they're able to hide these things so much better. And you would think that it would be harder. but it's almost easier for them to do it. And I can't fathom how that happens. How do you hide a plea, this plea deal Jeffrey Epstein took years before? And if it wasn't for somebody saying no BS on that, we wouldn't know about it. And we only found out about it after he was dead.
Well, I think the reason he did it was he was the aggregator of all the evil data. And so when you are the aggregator of all the evil data, now you can leverage whatever you want.
Well, maybe so, but the people, and we can only assume that that's the thing. And that I'd want to be a million miles from that and rather lose my job because somebody made up a lie than to look like I was being soft on that kind of crime, that I was complicit. And I can't for the life of me see these people with, they got to have some kind of core value to them. And I guess maybe I'm just naive. They don't.
Well,
Go ahead, Chris.
Look at it, JT. It's ancient. There's an ancient outlook, an ancient culture whereby people followed the letter of the law, but completely missed the spirit of the law.
Right.
And then once upon a time came a dude and he showed them that they were missing it.
Right.
They were missing the love, the spirit of the law, the reason the law was written, the purpose of it. They completely were missing. They were angered, bitter, judgmental men. And they didn't like his message, so they crucified him.
Right.
Bitterly, savagely. They would not allow the Romans to let him off. The Romans are like, we don't see any guilt. And they're like, no, crucify. Right? So now we have that same culture that has pervaded and is very prominent in the legal culture, in the lawyer community, manipulate the letter of the law, completely bypass the spirit and the intent of it.
Yeah.
It's a game to them. We're talking about, in many cases, sadly, moral reprobates. Look at all the lawyer jokes. Why do those exist? Because people resent that, right? And I had a guy that's big time in the legal system, and he's an expert witness. He's one of the best in the world. And he goes, Craig, you have to realize nobody in that courtroom is looking for truth. Nobody's looking for justice. And I'm like, what? Because think about it. The judge is just, his job is to manage the thing. And you've got two entities. You've got the prosecution, you got the defense. They're both looking for a win. Both will manipulate the letter of the law to get the win. Right. That's what they're fighting for. They're not fighting for truth or for justice. They're fighting for their law firms win at all cost. And that's why the letter law, they're looking at that to see what they can bypass and manipulate. And where's the spirit of it? Gone, gone, gone.
Right. That's what Jesus was saying, right, Craig? I mean, basically, Jesus was saying, I'm not going to get brought into your argument because you're just trying to nail me for something.
Yes.
And realizing that there is no love in your argument. There's no point in it other than a gotcha. And gotcha gets everybody. That's just the truth of it. But I see that more when you're talking about how you're out there in the field and how we see on social media how many people that will come at you kind of hard and other people that will just do the thumbs up. But you're wondering like, why are you coming at me so hard? It's because they just want to win. They just want to tear down the thing that you're doing without another thing. It's like, here's a cure for cancer. Well, we don't like yours. Well, do you have another cure? No, but we're just not going to use yours. We're not going to do anything. It's like, we're invited to just say, okay, just to take what we're given. And as I've read the Bible and I've gone down my spiritual journey, I always say the red letters are the ones. The red letters are he came to abolish the law because in effect, the Spirit should require no law, that you are called by the Spirit to be. And that's it. And if you're arguing the law, which makes being a lawyer a really difficult thing as a Christian, how do you defend the guilty? Well, you defend the law. That's what they're doing, defending the law, not the person.
Right.
And wow, we're
Well,
left with leftovers.
you're
Go ahead.
preaching, JT, because
Yeah.
look at how many people want to negotiate with their creator.
Yeah.
Well, I would be good on the inside. I would
Yeah.
want to love my neighbor. I would want to give. I would want to help and bless others. Except for there's a situation thereby
Yeah.
which I should be allowed off, right?
Right.
There's something, and I'll do it a little bit less than, or I'll do it a little bit differently. And it's like, no, it's on the inside. How you are is the
Right.
purpose. That's the
Yeah.
way. And then
Right.
people like dirty little lawyers want to
Yeah.
negotiate their way out of being good on the inside. It's like, that won't work,
Right.
man.
Right.
So you hit on a very wise observation there.
Yeah.
And my,
It's a
my
splitting hairs.
observation
Go
of
ahead.
this is that when you look at this crime, what's the litmus test to how heinous the crime is? This is one of those crimes that if somebody walked in on the act, they could do deadly harm to that person, and that would be okay. That's the problem that I have. I mean, if a parent walked in on somebody harming their child, they could use deadly force, whether it's hands, whether it's other weapons,
Whatever. Right.
whatever. And the reason being is that we know, we're all parents. We know the rage that sits inside and that we manage, but there are moments in our lives when we let that lion roar because we're there to protect her kids, especially mom. I mean, I bet Elizabeth, all 105 pounds of her, if anybody ever put their hands on the kids, she would literally rip their head off like a crawfish.
Yeah.
I could just see that. I see that in her spirit. And that's okay. But then you look at the antithesis of this, what she just witnessed is this guy could have died for what he did, but it was okay.
Mm.
This is very illogical to me too. I mean, that's why I
Right.
think it's a spiritual thing.
Elizabeth, so when you think about that, you sat there in the courtroom, how infuriating it is to know that the truth is filtered and attenuated out because of objections of here's this, that, of a poor lawyer, of a poor representation. A good lawyer can get anything, and you want to have a good lawyer because they can get what you want to say out. And that is really the horror, I think, of what you had to endure, is that you know what the truth is, and yet they stop it in your mouth before you can even get it out of your mouth. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Talk
So,
about
man,
that.
like just sitting there and just listening to that, like my heart was broken more than I was angry, because sadly I was expecting it, like just from my own experience. And I remember how upset I was then and just going through it, because just from the jump with mine, they were going to give him a year in jail and then probation. Like that's what they were going to offer. And I had to fight, like when you guys were talking about earlier, that you literally have to be willing to die for your cause. Like that in a sense was so true for me, because when that got handed down and the victim's advocate brought it to me, I was so enraged, so much so, like I demanded a meeting, and I told them that if this is how you protect victims, this is how you protect children, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like I went in there, like I made myself familiar with every single law, every single charge, like I was like, you will do better, like this is unacceptable. And that's why the one that we got was handpicked for us. But I shouldn't have had to fight on that battlefront. That's what should have been given to begin with. Like, these are innocent children. You should be putting the best on that. Like, okay, a murder happens, this happens, but you hurt a child. Like you said, a parent could go in and kill them and everybody would get it. Everybody would get it. So just sitting there, all I could think about while we were going through court yesterday, and while I'm watching this mom fall apart in the mediation room about what's happened to her children, how the justice system worked out, is like, this is why laws need to change. This is what's not okay. Like maybe the judge did give him the max that he could to keep as what he called the public as safe as he could, but that's not enough. And that's not okay. So if that's all you could do, then it needs to change and something needs to be different. Like in my case, all of his charges came off of his own admission. No, we shouldn't have a court process. There shouldn't be an option to file motions, to do this, to do that. No, you admitted it, you're done. All 240 years should be accounted for.
You
All
know,
of it.
Elizabeth, I think that the word that hurts my heart most of all in this case, see, if you murder somebody, there's not an allegedly body. There's a body,
Yeah.
right? But when you're dealing with a living victim, allegedly gets thrown so hard at that.
So much.
And in time, it's the filter of the system. So when you think about what you said is like they're not into it for the justice or for the truth. It is big business.
Yeah.
Lawyers and the legal system is billions and billions of dollars. And when you are in it, it's a machine for the person who needs it, right? But for the ants, the fire ants that run the business of it, it's business. They're whether they lose or win, they're making money.
Yeah.
They are, I have been billed, for a 15-minute conversation that I didn't have, all of those things, but it is big business. And meanwhile, the victim is saying, why am I having to, we have the proof, but through the filter of the system, it becomes allegedly.
Yeah.
And there's no body, right? And that's like, if you come in, you walk in on somebody raping your child, yep, you've got that, right? It's just that you still might have to, answer for deadly force, as we all know, but it won't be that hard, right? But if you allow them, when the police come and they remove them from that room, it becomes allegedly.
Yeah.
Because and if the witnesses who saw it can't say the thing because of the law that says no, objection, hearsay, objection, blah, 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 objection. Meanwhile, that child is like, I become smaller and smaller and smaller. And then we have small adults because they grow up and they grow up this small. I in my opinion, I guess I preached a little bit there, Craig, but
the system makes it so hard for them to come forward because of all of that.
Sure.
Like, I get why parents don't continue this out. Like, the system makes them so small, and then you put these defendants up there and you make them even smaller.
Right. Because you whip them. They whip them and say, will they endure? And I understand, but it's unbelievable because they're not whipping them to get to the truth. They're whipping them to win, which goes back to what you were saying, Craig. It'd be different if you were like going, okay, we're going to ask some hard questions because we want to make sure that people aren't lying. Right. But when you don't care whether they're lying and you're going to use some law trick, to stifle the truth, because you're a lawyer, because you're a judge, well, he's right. No, it ain't right. And we are stuck in that, dilemma, because the law is what lawyers do. They don't do people. They do the law. And meanwhile, we're out here worrying about people. So anybody got any final thoughts?
Well, we did recently interview Mark Geist, who wrote that book, 13 Hours of Benghazi, and he was there when that happened. But he's an interrogator, and we actually talked to him about kids, and when you, as an interrogator, you're actually an interviewer. So interrogation, interviewing. And he kind of alluded to us that there are techniques that you can teach that we should be propagating so you can have a proper interview with a child to ascertain the validity of what happened in a manner in which is safe for the child and a manner of which is understanding the crime, understand what happened. And you, as a trained counselor, psychologist person, you understand this. And so we do have the vehicles where we can protect the children. We can come to the truth and it can be addressed in the legal system. And I don't think we're doing that, because this case really illustrates, the end result was, if going back to my litmus test, was the punishment, was it equal the crime or even close? No, not at all. And it's certainly very sad. Elizabeth, what's the dynamic now between the dad and his kids? I mean, as part of that, he can never see his kids again. Do we know?
So she has full custody. She has sole custody and has for the past while now. He has nothing to do with him. And they haven't wanted anything to do with him in a really long time. Like, there were some issues at home and they were acting out. They didn't want to go back to him. There were issues, like, she didn't know at the time. And, we even discussed that part of it. She was like, how did I not see? And I explained to her, I said, this is where I didn't struggle as a parent. Like, the psychologist told us, like, don't ever question yourself. Like, there's nothing you like could have done, could have seen. Like, there were little things, like my kids were nitpicking at each other, like things I don't normally allow them to do. Yes, they fight, but not like it was not wanting to get out of bed in the morning. But that could be signs of other things. Like, so I never felt that guilt that, oh, I missed it. I mean, we were in a house of 6 kids. Like, my last kid was born at 29 weeks and spent almost 5 months in the hospital, and I was gone all the time. Like, so of course the dynamic was going to be different. And so I never just went back and was like, oh, I miss it. I let it happen. I didn't protect them. No, I did. Like, this was my nephew. Like, I should have been able to trust him. Like, our families did do these things together. And she went over that. She was like, did I miss it? And I'm like, you can't put that on you. You didn't miss it. When they were acting out in the beginning, you two had separated. That could have been a bully at school. That could have just been like one parent working another parent against each other. Like, you have no idea what it could have been.
Well, there's also there's a point in your life when you decide to get married. This is your mate. This is somebody who you love and trust enough to spend your life together. I mean, that's the intention when you get into a relationship like that. And I think it's hard for you to kind of process when you're looking at your kids misbehaving that that's the cause. By the time you get to that point, you could blame yourself, but you're automatically giving a pass because you couldn't imagine. I mean, why did you pick this mate? You would have never picked that person as your mate.
Well, then you can go right back to the fact that we did choose them, and because I can tell you that I chose poorly a few times, and I realized that I chose poorly because of a need that I was not addressing.
Well, sure,
I'd become a sexual surrogate to abusers and didn't realize it. Like, and I think that that's what happens to children. Is they are invited to do this thing. Most of them, it's not strong arm robbery. It's not strong arm rape. They're invited into this thing, and they become a surrogate, of sorts, because obviously, whatever the abuser is, it's not about love. It's about something else. And children just, as I grew up realizing that I spent many of my adult years, operating as not a real person, as a surrogate. And when you realize that, you're like, oh my God, I've been asleep. I was asleep. I was asleep in the light. And I got to forgive that kid. I got to forgive all of that. But I do have to own that I walked right into it. I walked in with it, and I do forgive myself for that. But that's where the healing, and I'm sure, Elizabeth, there are times when you want to kick yourself right in the soul over it. And this woman too. And the anger, and what she really has to fight against is the anger that, well, what was the point? The point is to fight, because you won't win them all.
Yeah. Like, I just kept reminding her, I said, this is your platform. I said, you take that anger and you take all of this that's burning inside of you and what wasn't done right, and you use this to help change somebody else's life.
Right.
You God always works in your 11th hour.
Yeah. And I know that to be true. But you know what he won't do? He won't fight you in your anger. He'll let the anger tear you apart.
Yeah.
Because he knows he can build you back. But I mean, these people are saying, well, like Craig, you said, well, I would, but there's and like, oh, well, God put this in. I don't know why this happens, that happens. Why do bad things happen to good people? And, like, God's not in the business of explaining everything to you. And what he really would like you to have is some insight and say, how do I operate in me, in the way that I am, the way that I've been built? In the troubles that I've been through, how do I operate in that? How do I make myself useful to myself and others. And honestly, anger gets in the way of that. The self-loathing, you know.
There's
Craig,
something,
please.
JT, I found recently in my discussions with the creator, and I've asked him to help me identify any aspects of me that are not pleasing to him, that are not productive, that don't belong in his kingdom, are not like him, and help me identify them. And I will make war on those parts with him. I asked for his assistance to make war on those aspects of me so that I can jettison that useless cargo or that counterproductive cargo, that those parts of my personality or tendencies or mind or soul that want to or do things that are not in his will. I want those out of my life. I want those out of my being. And he will help us identify that and eject that from us. We have free will, and it's work. It's a process. Let's take overeating. I love to eat, and sometimes I overeat. And can I fix that? Yes. Has it been, for whatever reason, a more difficult battle than I would have thought? Yes. But it's a process, and I'm working through it, and that's okay because I'm getting better and I'm growing in that. I mean, that may sound like a silly example, but it's one I think a lot of people may be able to relate to because we're all different. But that is part of it too. And as long as we're on this planet, we're never going to be perfect. But it is the journey, it's the process of exercising our free will to be on the inside, to take every thought captive and choose to be productive, loving, good, giving, and obedient in these things. And that in that lies so much healing and blessing. In that lies the healing. There's never been a love that I've experienced as the love that I've experienced as I've grown closer to the creator, just in having conversations and working through these things. And man, when you find something good, John, don't you want to share it with everybody you care
Oh
about?
yeah,
You
yeah.
find like some
Right.
amazing widget or medicine or product. You're like, this is really so freaking good. And you run around and you chasing me like this is not. And some people are like, thank you, brother. That's I'm benefiting from it. And some people are like, they
Yeah.
don't understand, and they're not going to listen to you, and they don't want it, and they don't think they need it, and you can't force it on them. But you want them to benefit, so it's like that, and we each are going through that journey. So it's a process,
Craig,
man.
when you were saying that, I've been in those moments of wanting to be more aware, more in tune spiritually. You know, I remember a friend saying, you can take good things and make them evil. And so when you said that, like God show me and I just picture the email folder going brrr, right, but he doesn't do that. It's not like you go, wow, there's 1,000 emails from God right now because I said go ahead and open the floodgates. It's just what I love about being a dad is the insight that I've gained that I could only believe would work because of time. If I'd gone back and somebody said, well, let me have it, give me all of the things, I'll fix all of these things. To have the wisdom to know when your kids are playing, you're like, it's not now. It's not. It's not I know what he's saying. I know what he wants. But you know what? We're gonna dole these things out as he becomes aware, right? And he's ready to change them. But that's what I saw when you were thinking that is just how many emails I'd be getting if I asked that question, right? What do you need me to change? Yeah.
So he gives me a short list, but they're real
I
things.
would,
And
I'd
you
be
know
like,
that
it's all
they're,
spam. It's got to be
yeah,
all spam. It can't be all from God. Anyway,
You
guys,
were saying,
I think we had a really great discussion. And Elizabeth, I'm proud of you because
us
there
too.
are some things that are just heavy because of what you've been through, and they're heavier. They're made heavier when you're like, you really want the best for it. And it sounds like you had a better situation. But when you see it taking a turn, it's got to be just crushing,
my
to have to see that.
was the way it was because he admitted to the police, to the girls. Unfortunately, he didn't about the boys. He did to his bishop, he did to his parents, and he did to when they did the psychosexual eval, but all inadmissible.
Yeah.
And his bishop actually told him, like, not to tell the police, like, yes, let's not do the right thing. And the only reason we settled on the plea and didn't go to court is because they were ripping my son Liam apart. Like, and it would have been so bad on
Oh,
this.
right.
And it literally was right before court, like not even a week before court, that we settled on that. And so the only reason we got what we got is because he admitted these crimes, not my children. They never said a word ever. Like they still don't talk about it. They'll tell me certain things, but like they still don't. And truth be told, like he did this to all 6 of my children, and this is the minimum that he gets.
Yeah.
Like there isn't the justice in the fact that he admitted it, and he should have been charged with all of it regardless. There shouldn't have been a plea. There shouldn't have had to go to trial. My kids should never have to sit up there and say anything like he admitted it. And she didn't get that.
Well, she didn't get it right now, but
Yeah.
I know that in time, all of my losses, as I have grown, as I have become more graceful to myself and others, I've realized that the wins have come. You know,
Yeah,
all my
me too.
losses have been turned into like wins because time helped and God helped me, you know, to see the win where it really was. So
Yeah.
I just hope that for her as speedily as it comes. But man, it takes a while, you know,
She's
to understand the cryptology of God's will, man. You know?
Yeah, and she's gonna have to work through this anger for a while. And like
Yeah.
I teach my kids, like I've never hated anybody ever. Like there is no room in my heart for hate. Like you can hate the sin without hating the sinner. And when you let anger overtake you, that allows for hate. So I've never, like genuinely, I've never hated anyone. And like I told her, like you take that anger and God wants to meet you where you are. Be angry, talk to him, like he'll have a conversation with you, like Craig was saying. And I tell my children this, like he's not asking you to get on your knees every single time. Just
Yeah.
talk to him. When you're
Yeah.
angry, just let it all out. Like just throw it out there. Like
Right.
he loves you enough to just carry that. Like he says that his yoke is light, like for a reason, and he's gonna take that. Like so just take that. And like you'll get to a point, and like I told her, you'll get to a point where that is lighter, and you can direct that frustration towards something else, and you don't allow that to turn into hate, because hate is something different and it will consume you. So
Yeah.
hopefully she really can do that. She has some ideas that she has been having those conversations with God, that he already feels like there was a purpose for this, and this is where he's directing her. So hopefully she uses the rest of it for that same thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I wish my kids would just say, hey, you know, I mean, I know that probably every dad in this room would be like, I get tickled when they go, Dad, can I, you know, will you help me with anything? You know, sure, I'll learn physics. I'll go into bed, I'll do anything, but like just to be out in the yard and say, hey, we need you, because most of the time we're wandering around going, I don't know what to do with my hands. So anyway, all right, I love you guys.
Great.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Again, I appreciate everybody in this room, and I'm so thankful for everything that you guys have done for me. So
Right on,
back at
JT.
you.
Good chat, everybody. Merry New Year.
Merry
Merry
New Year.
New Year, right. Tell Aspen happy birthday.
I will do this.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.